You know, I'm the kind of guy who is always in search of just a little more luxury. But on the back nine, I'm no longer content with settling for things that companies present that give the illusion of luxury, but aren't elevated enough to justify the additional payment. Some examples: donuts as a premium item, seasonal coffee treats, digital subscriptions that promise higher levels of content behind a paywall. I mean, they're all just versions of the champagne room at the strip club. Am I right? These are things towards which I cast a wary and jaded eye on the back nine. All right, Dennis, wait. First, I've never been a strip club guy. I mean, you can just take $400 out of my wallet and set it on fire for all the good it does me. But there's others, right? There's extra pricing for movie seats that recline, premium coach seating on the Bright Line that gets me down here from Orlando to Delray Beach, all of those kinds of things.
Okay. I'm going to take it a step further because I love all those.
Yeah.
I have a little pet peeve of mine. I also think crappy rewards programs, which is what you're getting to, are really, really... You know what the worst rewards program is? And I don't care if they're ever a sponsor of this. They should know this, is Starbucks. You get like 200 points, which is equivalent to $200. You get a free sandwich. 300 points, you get like a wink and a sandwich. Like it's
the wink.
I mean, I don't even know. And then here's what they did to me. Here's what they did to me on January 1st. I go in and I'm like, oh, I was over 200 points and now I have 190 something. Oh, we have expiring points.
Right. You got to use them.
I'm like, son of a nutcracker.
Well, here's the other part of it. I think it's an excuse for companies to provide what the premium programs, these so-called premium programs are now. That used to be standard. So it's allowed them to lower the level of standard. And this now seems like a luxury. I mean, the movie seats that recline, granted, that is a little bit elevated from what it used to be. But it's now another 50%. Instead of paying $12 for a rigid seat, you pay $18 for a ticket. Yeah, the seat goes back. You can put up your feet, and they'll bring you mediocre food at expensive prices.
Right.
It's all designed to make you feel like you're getting something when you're not really getting a whole. Not really. Right? You're getting a treat. It's like it's feeding the addictive behavior.
Right. It goes back to the ones that are good, and we've talked a million times about Delta. They can be a sponsor of this show because they do have a
very good job. Yeah.
They do a good job with the rewards program. So yeah, I'm with you. I just think that there's other examples too that aren't coming to mind right now of these point systems that are basically meaningless. But Starbucks is probably the top of the list for me.
And it also extends beyond just rewards programs. I'm thinking about it used to be when we were kids, there was fast food, right? It was McDonald's, it was Burger King, it was who's even been to a Burger King lately? I don't know. And now you've got Chipotle and you've got Fresh Kitchen and you've got, all of those that are similar to that. And yeah, it's a little healthier. It's definitely healthier. But we're supposed to think that we're taking care of ourselves and spending. I went to a one that's down the street from my house. It's a bowl place, salad place, and it's good. But it was like $21 for a fast casual.
Yeah, you're out $30.
Salad with no meat in it.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
an acai bowl for
there you go. Exactly.
$18.
Yeah.
And it's got a little bit of fruit and some nuts in it.
Yeah, and maybe a little feta. Because feta's better than the crappy slice of processed American that you used to slap on your burger.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, yeah, we sound, you know what we sound like?
Old people. That's what we sound like.
We sound like curmudgeon-y back nine people just bitching about the world.
It's very, and I should say this. Having said that, it was a delicious salad, and I like Fresh Kitchen. They're good places, but I just don't always want to, just the whole concept.
I'm trying to figure out how to spin this so that we don't sound like the curmudgeon old guys.
There's no way.
Right? Yeah. It is what it is.
Yeah.
I guess that's what we are now.
Yeah. Well, we are, but we're going to bring in a guest who is our age, back nine person, but not curmudgeon-y. In fact, I think you're really going to enjoy getting to meet this special guest. It is another special guest.
It's a surprise. I don't know. I do not know who it is.
Mine for you. It's coming up right after we take this break on the back nine. All right, so welcome back. It is special guest time, and we heard Dennis's guest last week, and now it's time for my guest. So let's do the introduction here. Dennis, you ready?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm changing things up this season because my surprise guest is a guy. And he's a guy, I don't think you know him personally, but you certainly know who he is. He's a guy who was born in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, but he's not a Tar Heel. He is a distinguished alumnus of Old Dominion, which is both a university and one of your favorite bands.
Yes,
as
it
happens
is.
to be.
It is. Yeah.
In fact, he was the keynote speaker at that school's centennial celebration. And he's also one of us. He's a sportscaster, but he's highly accomplished and he's still practicing. In fact, he's been at ESPN for over 2 decades now. He's got a voice and a demeanor that just puts the viewer at complete ease. He's been a part of multiple shows that have won Emmys, and he has also won himself significant awards from the Hampton Roads Black Media Professionals Group and the Pittsburgh Black Media Federation. Dennis, say hello to Jay Harris.
Hey, Jay Harris, how are you?
Good.
Very cool. Very cool to meet you.
So welcome in. And as we're recording this, Jay, last night we watched a very important college football game. It was the Penn State Notre Dame college football semifinal, the national championship. And, you know, it occurred to me to wonder from the sportscasting perspective, have you seen things change? Do you sense that the sports world galvanized around this moment the way that we used to gather around signature events?
I want to say yes, but I want to make a quick correction. I was born in Norfolk, Virginia.
Oh, you were born in Norfolk. Okay.
That's
raised in Chapel Hill.
Probably why you didn't guess me. So
that's for sure. I'm sorry. I threw you off with that clue.
Yeah, I think so. People still watch games, and with the advent of social media, you can have a bigger watch party if you just, go online and check out the comments. So, yeah, I think people still get up to big games for big games.
So Jay, how have you seen the landscape of sportscasting change? Josh and I had to leave the industry. It got so different, and we were more local than national. But man, has it changed. I mean, you kind of have to be, we've talked about this before in the show, you have to be your own brand. The network's not as important as you are personally. Have you had to do that in your own evolution, sort of become your own brand and rely less on the call letters?
Actually, no. It's probably been more the opposite for me. And I guess the 4 letters, ESPN, have had a lot to do with that. I mean, local is so different because local sports just gets cut from the budget and people just lose their jobs. And it's just, local sports is in a state that I don't know will be repaired. But at least for me, being identified with ESPN, I kind of have a brand built in. I use social media to pump up Jay Harris every now and then. But even my social media handle is Jay Harris ESPN. I don't mind being associated with ESPN. It's my employer. I love my gig, so I'm cool with it. So I really haven't focused on building like whatever Jay Harris is. Jay Harris comes through on my job. Jay Harris comes through when you see me on television. Jay Harris comes through when you meet me at events. Jay Harris comes through in everything that I do. I'm always going to be me. And right now I'm associated with ESPN, and that's fine.
Let's go back a little bit to how you got there, because I remember distinctly reading about you getting the job to go to ESPN. It was at a time, I think probably in our careers, Dennis and my careers, where working in local, Dennis was at the time at the CBS in Buffalo, and I was at the Sports Network in Buffalo. And we're thinking about, at that stage of our lives, being able to make the jump and make the change. And what was interesting about your path is you came from the news side. And in my mind, especially as I look back now over 2 decades to that point, I feel like that marked a little bit of a change in how ESPN presented, in large part because of you. The catchphrase days kind of seemed to go away in favor of a more news style of presentation that I thought you brought to the network at the time, and that looking back on it seems much more clear now and how that's changed. What was your sentiment as you stepped into that role and how things have changed over the past couple of decades?
Well, when I was hired, it was for ESPN News, and it was a whole different vibe. Mm-hmm. It was 30 minutes. We give you all the stories. We give you everything you need to know in 30 minutes and come back for the next 30 minutes and get an update if there are some games going on. So it was a totally different mindset. So I think, yes, coming from news, being able to sit on the set for longer than 2 minutes, because our shows are sometimes 2-3 hours long, helped me out from doing an hour newscast every night. We do our own writing, which I've done more writing at ESPN than I did back in local news because the associate producers did most of the writing, which is odd, but that's the way it works. So I think they saw something in me that kind of fit their vision for ESPN News and maybe SportsCenter. But if you look back at some of the great folks that have been in the chair that I get to sit in, like Dan Patrick, like Stuart Scott, like Bob Lee. I'm not purposefully leaving the ladies out, like Linda Cohn. They were all really great, all really great journalists, great writers and storytellers. So I think the mechanism may have changed, but at the core, it's still a storytelling business. And that's what I try and do. And I lean on a lot of the folks that came before me to try and do it better every day.
Yeah, it is important that the journalistic standard is still in place, and you embody that for sure, because not everybody takes that anymore. Like, I think what I was getting at before is people try to be their own brands and as loud as they can be and all of those kinds of things that you see all the time. And it's nice that we still, and you see that across, not just in sports, you see that just in media in general, that there's a line drawn now. You're either kind of that bombastic, want to be noticed, loud person, or you kind of stick to your guns and stay old school journalist. And I hope it's not a dying breed, but it seems like it is in some respects. Do you agree?
In some respects, it may be. I mean, there are a lot of lines drawn. People with the opinions are more often the louder people, and people who want to be the journalists are, they want to stick to the journalistic part of it. But yeah, I hope we're not a dying breed, because I got a lot of years left.
Yeah, right. I mean, we're all on the back nine, but hopefully there are a lot of holes still to play. That's our metaphor.
If I'm on hole 10, I'm on hole 10.
We all want to be on hole 10, just teeing off on 10.
Yeah,
You mentioned storytelling. Has storytelling changed as media has changed?
I think we have more access to stories. We have more access to people via social media. And, being able with the internet, jumping on the Google machine and finding out something from somebody's childhood that can make a great story on a lead in. We've always had that. So I think it's changed a little bit. Yeah. It's changed in the fact that when I go on, you already know what happened, because you've either seen it on your phone or you've seen it on social media or see whatever. So my job is not to necessarily tease you into telling you who won, but to get into more of the, the how and the what and the why and all that other stuff, and tell that story, and do it in a compelling way to make you want to tune in to hear that kind of thing, because you're not going to just get that on your phone in the moment.
Jay, what's your favorite story that you've ever covered? Or, do you have one in particular that you can point to? Are there many?
Oh, man, there are many. The one that always comes back to me from my news days in Pittsburgh. My photographer and I went to interview a woman whose loved ones had been identified through this new technology, war remains of her loved one, and they were coming back. And we went to talk to her, and all the stations did, because it was a pretty big story. And we had one newscast a night, so we didn't have to bust out for the 5, 6, and whatever live shot, so we could stay. And she brought out flags, and she brought out newspaper clippings, and she brought out a lot of mementos. And we took the time and talked to her about it. And he took some really good photos and video. And we gathered all that stuff and put it into a story. I wrote it on the way back to the station, and he edited it. And it was great. It was beautiful. A couple of days later, we get this letter in the mail from her telling us how thankful and grateful she was about the way we treated her story and her family's story. And that has stuck with me, because, in this business, you get feedback from viewers all the time. And most of the time, it's not positive.
That's right.
Right.
So for something like that, back in the day where you had to actually write a letter and get a stamp and put it in an envelope and send it through the mail, and she took the time to do that, that has always stuck with me. That's one of my favorite stories.
Yeah, it's always nice when you get some kind of commendation that recognizes that you've told a good story, right? That it's connected. Where did you develop your art, your storytelling skills? Was that in your childhood? And do you see those same avenues available, whatever those were, for up-and-coming storytellers, journalists today? How is it different?
I'll answer the second part first. I think the avenues are still there, but I think sometimes we miss the turns onto those avenues because we think we have to do it a different way. I grew up with a bunch of funny people. My grandparents were comedians. They were storytellers. My parents the same way. My dad would tell you the same story over and over again, but he told it really well.
Yeah.
So I think I had that in me, but I think I'm still developing my storytelling style, because you meet people along the way who do things and influence you. Like when I first got the job, everyone had the quote book on the desk, and you try to, incorporate that stuff with your story and blah, blah, blah. And I did a show with Scott Van Pelt once, and he just was so himself, equating stories or whatever to his upbringing in DC and just being Scott. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of cool. I'm gonna try just being Jay. And working with Stuart, and just the master class of knowing which stat to try and get from the researcher to tell the story to make it sing. And then, okay, I'm gonna steal a little bit of that too. And working with Bob Lee, I'm gonna steal a little bit of that in the newsy journalism stuff that was much more well-defined than mine. And I've just been stealing from my whole career. And I think people don't just look around them at the foundational basic things that can help you tell a story, because they're so quick to try, I want to just find something that's crazy and blah, blah, blah. Everything doesn't need that. Sometimes you just need to tell me what happened. And that's fine. If along the way there's something that, I don't know, that jazzes that up a little bit, great. But sometimes you just have to tell me what happened, and that's okay.
So you touched on something that I wanted to go dig a little deeper on, and that is, we all have, mentors in our lives that give us sound advice, and we use it on the back nine. We realize that was really profound. That is really something I needed to know in this second chapter of my life, whether you're on hole 10 or whatever. but what is one of those things that has been imparted on you, or a couple things that have been imparted on you that are important to you to live with on the back nine?
I will always there's a fine line between being persistent and being a pest. So you have to kind of find that line, because that's just with life. The guy who gave me my start in this field told me that years and years ago. When Stuart Scott told me to just do you, that really has stuck with me, because it takes a lot of courage to be yourself, to be that naked in front of people, to just give them you instead of putting on the newscaster or the sportscaster facade. Mm-hmm. Who do you think you have to be when you deliver the news? No, just tell me the story, man, and take that voice and set it aside or whatever, all that bad. Don't do that. Just be you. So that one really sticks with me. Just do you. It's hard, though.
You work with students at the Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting. I do,
and I love it.
Yeah, and I know you pass that information along to them. Yeah. What do you see from them, from this younger generation, that inspires you and makes you feel like, hey, this industry is in good hands going forward?
They are animals. I mean, they want this so badly. They want to, they believe in the craft. And I think Dan is Dan is the reason why, because Dan is the consummate journalist. And when you go to the Dan Patrick School at Full Sail University, you glean that. That has to rub off on you. So they just really want to do well. And there's so many good instructors that I'm sure that they want to perform well for as professionals because of the information and the schooling that they've gotten at Full Sail. That our industry is in good hands. And I tell them this, as long as they don't try to go so fast. I'm like, when you get to your first job, you're not going to be there forever. But don't immediately, as soon as you sign to go your first day there, don't start thinking about your second job. Enjoy the time you have there. Be present. Learn the community. Meet people. And that will ingratiate yourself. They will like that. They will watch you. They will feel that in your storytelling. So do that. Just slow down, take your time, be present. The next job will happen, and do the same thing there. Don't be so microwave-ish. Turn the oven on, right? And let the oven warm to 350 instead of 10 seconds in the microwave. And you'll enjoy the ride a little bit better that way.
Hey, Jay, you've mentioned Stuart Scott a couple times. And for those of you who don't know, Stuart Scott was a very prominent sportscaster at ESPN, passed away way too early. I actually just looked, it's been 10 years. Holy smokes. Yeah. I can't even believe it's been 10 years. Time goes so fast. A lot of those, you're too young and we're too young really to have been there when the Jimmy V situation happened. But ESPN has this sort of legacy of making the most out of some real tragedies that have happened over the years. How important is that story? I mean, it really is kind of a back nine story too, is making those really horrible things into a positive. And I feel like ESPN's done that multiple times, and Stuart Scott's an example of that.
I mean, unfortunately, that's part of life.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of have to embrace the good with the bad and whatever context it is, and just let the chips fall where they may. You can't shy away from things that might make you cry. You can't shy away from things or situations that might make you really angry. You have to confront those. So journalistically, if you can do that, then in life you can do that. And it, in kind of a weird way, it really balances you out because you don't have a choice but to face things head on.
Is that something that you could have understood or accepted on the front nine of your life, or is that something that you've learned and incorporated into your actions and beliefs and values as you've moved into this stage that we're all in?
I think to really learn it, you got to live a little. You have to experience a few things. You have to be around some things that really drive that home. I think when I was younger, I didn't experience a lot of close death. As I've gotten older, your friends, family members, it's like, oh my God, seriously? Stop, please. I don't want to go to another funeral. I'm tired of this stuff. So you kind of have to confront it. So I think, now is when I've really experienced that stuff.
Does it make...
I don't like it.
You don't like it.
But we have to face it.
Yeah. So how does that help you with your sort of work-life balance with your family and everything? I think we all kind of juggle with that all the time, too, on how to focus on work when we're at work and how to balance the family and the rest of your life as well.
You said it. That's exactly what you have to do. When I'm home, I really try to be at home. There are some times where I will purposely not turn the TV on and I will set my phone down. Because right now, I don't need to know. I need to do this. I need to get the honey-do list and do that. I need to, whatever with the kids, I need to do that. I don't need to be Jay Harris, ESPN. I just need to be Jay, husband, dad, errand boy, whatever. That's what I need to do right now. And when I get to work, I'm not going to say they don't exist, but they kind of don't, because I have to do this right now. And they understand that, because the more I do this, then the more they get to do. So it's a nice balance. But you said it. You just have to, in the moment, you have to make a choice and be present where you are.
And are you and Stephanie now officially empty nesters?
No. Okay. Tyra's sophomore.
Oh, okay.
At Hampton. And Bryce is a up-and-coming music producer.
Yeah.
And Tyra's a theater major. So between music and theater, I'll be working.
I was going to say, you need to keep working at ESPN. Yeah. How is that transition? Now that you're a father of kids who are, college age or out of college, how has that changed your relationship with them? We're in the same boat. Between us, our four girls are 21 to 27. I did that backwards, but that age range. So yours are in roughly the same area. How has that changed your life as a dad, if at all?
Honestly, it's caused me to go back to life school a bit, to try and understand the things that drive them, to not be stuck in old fogey land. This is how we did it back in my day, and that's the only way it could be done, because that just doesn't work. So it keeps me on my toes. Like when they tell me something and my first inclination is, that's silly, or that music sucks. No, take a minute and listen to it. Or think about what they said, because they may have some merit and that song may be good. And many times they're right and I'm wrong. And that's great.
Yeah.
Well, I think it comes down to, listening. And like you said before, in other aspects of your career, you were a good listener and you were paying attention. I think that's really important. As your kids get older, they become a little bit more, we've talked about this in the show, they become a little bit more of your friends and less of your kids. So you've got to be that listener and that friend that is curious about what they're doing and not just continuing to impart your wisdom, in quotes, on them, right?
Yeah, they'll be better friends once they get up and start making some money.
Right, yeah.
Retire to the golf course. They will be great friends. But
buy you your condo in, wherever, Palm Springs, wherever it might be.
Right. Exactly.
Jay, what's next for you? What do you still want to do professionally? What's still on the table? What are the opportunities that you have always wanted to explore that you have not yet?
That's a great question. I don't know. I think voiceover stuff has always intrigued me. I like to do a little bit more of that. I still like doing what I'm doing, and I'm going to do it as long as they'll let me. I get up every morning and I look at my bass guitar sitting in the corner and I think I should play you more and maybe try and start another band just to, play some music. Because if I wasn't doing this, I think I'd be doing that.
Wait, you said another band. This is something I don't know. Were you in a band before?
Well, L. Duncan and I had a band.
Okay.
Until COVID kind of wrecked it. Our guitar player and his family had to leave and things kind of just fell apart. But we were pretty good. We were actually pretty good. I enjoyed that experience. We had a good time.
Well, it's interesting because that has been a back nine story that's been very consistent. Is we've had several people come on this podcast and say they've rediscovered their love of an instrument or their craft that they had on the front nine, and it really is a connecting thing for people to go back to it. So don't be afraid to go back to it. We've heard that countless times in this show, and what joy it brings. And the bottom line is the level of joy that return to playing that instrument brings to their life.
Absolutely. 100% agree.
Yep.
Well, Jay, you have brought us a lot of joy as we record you today. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
I look forward. Anita Baker, you bring me joy. It's like
It's a new song for your new band, I think, right? You bring me joy. So look forward to seeing you next time you're down this way. And send my love to Stephanie. She, by the way, she's fantastic. I met her when I first met Jay. She's terrific. And I look forward to seeing you. Thanks for joining us.
Wonderful to have you. Great to
right.
meet you, Jay. Thank you so much.
We'll see you, my friend.
Glad to be your surprise.
It was awesome. Really cool. Thank you.
Take care.
Well done.
Well, thank you. He's a really good guy.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed getting to know him. I got to know him when we were building the Dan Patrick School, and he leaned in hard. And you can see his passion for developing, the next generation of people who will be in the industry. And I was also struck today, this is probably the most we've talked about, the art of storytelling. I'm a big believer in that, not only in sports and in journalism, but in general, being able to tell our stories. And to that point, one of my favorite movies, have you ever seen the movie Avalon? An older movie, probably around 1991. It's got a young, is it Elijah Wood or Toby? I think it's Elijah Wood and Aidan Quinn and Kevin Pollak, all about telling how we tell stories. And it's really important, and especially as we move into the back nine, as we're on the back nine, of being able to tell the stories that have been instructive to our lives, for ourselves, for our partners, for our families.
What I was struck by, and I think, I'm always looking for the threads that are lessons in life that we have in our show. And the one thing that he talked about was he kept saying, I stole this from this person. I stole this from this person. That's called like listening to your mentors. That's called being curious, which we talk about, so it really, that transcends any business, any industry. If you're out there and you're trying to work your way up, pay attention to the people around you who are good at what they do, right? And steal from them.
Yeah. And echoing something that you've said in previous episodes, which is at this stage of life, also listen to our kids. Also listen to people who are on the front nine. We've had front nine guests this whole season. We spent some time with our kids, and your kids especially, late in 2024. And they're adults now, and they have their own observations on the world, and they're different from ours. And not only are they worth paying attention to because they represent how our kids are growing and developing and how they see the world, but also for how we understand what the next generations are thinking about.
Yeah, I think there's some parents out there that think that I say, always trying to impart their wisdom on their kids. There becomes a time when that is just, you can be done with that unless they ask for it. I'm grateful when my kids ask me for advice, but if they're not soliciting that advice, I'm not pounding it on them anymore. I'm not delivering it like a parent would. I want to be more curious about what's going on in their life. How are they doing? That's what I think is really important.
I agree with that. One slight caveat, though, is that I had an epiphany about something fairly recently that's kind of reflective of what the last 12 months have been and the lessons I've taken away from that. And it has changed my perspective on some things, and things that I instructed them in one way when they were little, or tried to provide that idea when they were little. And I no longer think that some of those things are correct. Part of that is, just my own transformation and my own evolution, where I would say, this is the advice I would have given you 10 years ago. Today, I don't think it's right anymore. And so I want to be able to say, hey, I want to correct that, or this is how I see it now, and offer that to them. Is that wisdom? Are they soliciting that? No. But do I think it's important to say, so that they're not stuck where I was stuck before? I think it's important to impart that too. And I'll be very interested. I have not.
Is there an example of that you can give?
Yeah. I mean, I think, it's a good question, Dennis. I think I used to believe that we should pursue things, chase things. Our ambition should be about pursuit and driving towards something, seeking something external to provide our motivation. And I don't really think that anymore. I think that the way to go is, meaning I don't think we should seek something external to make us happy and then everything will make us happy. I think it starts with get happy yourself. Figure out what are those things. You don't necessarily need to fit into the construct of the 9-to-5 job. Do these things to set yourself in the corporate, not necessarily even corporate, but our everyday business structure. I mean, I've had almost a year now, actually, as this releases exactly a year, of stepping out of that where my whole life had been to do my own thing. Right. And I haven't made as much money in the first year. I will, but I haven't yet. But I've really enjoyed this. And not because I'm not obligated to anybody else, just because I have a better sense of I'm doing things the way I want to do them. I still have an obligation to bring money in and to take care of things, but I'm not under the obligation of anybody else's expectations of what that should be. I can create that. I think that's especially important for Gen Zers because I think they start to see the world that way. They don't believe in the institutions the way that we used to. They don't trust government. They don't trust companies. They don't trust anybody that says they're going to look out for you because in the end, they don't. Right?
Yeah, no, I think that's brilliant. I mean, actually, you gave me that Why Not to Worry, that Stoic book. Yeah. That's just Stoicism is what you're talking about. That's just not allowing the world to be what you react to, right? Like you react how you're going to react, but it's not from an external source. Exactly what you're saying. That's just the Stoic philosophy. You go through life and it's all about how you are reactionary to things. You don't have to. You don't have to be what the world says you have to be. Right,
what the world expects you to be.
What the world expects you to be, or what that person expects you to be. And yeah, I mean, I'm totally on board.
It is a belief in yourself, right? It's betting on yourself. I mean, Patrick talked about that a couple of seasons ago, bringing it back to Jay a little bit. But yeah, so that's because I have not spoken those. By the time this airs, I will have said this to my daughters. But as we're recording it, I haven't yet. And I do think that's a kind of wisdom as we evolve, 30, 35 years older than our kids, to offer how we see the world today, I think is also important.
I think the other thing is, and I know there's a lot of stereotypes with the generations. I think what you said about Gen Z is very important. I think that they are rebelling against that. I think this is a really important message for millennials because I see a lot of millennials as the woe is me. That person did this to me. I'm affected by this. Or I wish they wouldn't say that. They made me feel so bad. Like you hear that from millennials. Or I wish my boss didn't do that because they make me feel a certain way. I think that's a very, very consistent thing with millennials. And it's common for me to say, no, they didn't make you feel that way.
Right. You're responsible for how you feel.
You're responsible for how you feel. Yeah. Nobody makes you feel a certain way. Right. That's inside of you, and how you react to things is up to you.
Or if the emotion, maybe a boss says something, and your initial feeling is shock, sadness, anger. That's instinctive, right? There's not much you can do about that in the moment. But how you choose to carry it with you, you can stay angry, you can stay sad, or you can figure out your way, stoicism, to, okay, I don't need to let that feeling pervade. I'm going to figure out my way to deal with that, process it, and then move forward.
Exactly. Yeah, good stuff.
Interesting guest. Jay's a wonderful guy, and I'm glad that he spent some time with us, and glad that you spent some time with us, and we look forward to having you spend more time with us on upcoming editions of The Back Nine.